protect. The innocent, even when it means going to war against his own blood. Dad-perfect-revenge. I didn't react when my son pushed me down the basement stairs. I just lay there in the darkness, tasting blood, listening to his footsteps fade away upstairs. My daughter-in-law's laughter echoed through the floorboards. "Maybe now he'll finally get the message," she said. I was 67 years old. My hip screamed. My wrist was definitely broken, but I didn't call out. I didn't bang on the door. I just pulled out my phone with my good hand and made one call. 3 words. That's all I said. "It's time, Lenny." Then I waited in the dark. You're probably wondering how I ended up here, lying at the bottom of my own basement stairs, while my son and his wife laughed about it upstairs. Let me back up. My name is Harold Eugene Pierce. For the last 12 years, I've been what you might call retired. I live in a modest house in Cleveland, spend my days reading, going to the gym, visiting my late wife's grave every Sunday. I'm the quiet old man at the corner table in the diner, the one who tips well and never causes trouble. But that wasn't always who I was. My son Gerald never knew what I did before he was born. His mother, my beloved Dorothy, she knew. For 30 years, I was a senior financial investigator for the state insurance department. I caught people who thought they were smarter than the system. Insurance fraud, pension scams, fake disability claims, mortgage fraud. I've seen every trick in the book, and I was good at it. Really good. In my career, I built cases that sent over 200 people to prison. I knew how to trace money through shell companies, how to spot forged signatures under microscopic analysis, how to build evidence chains that prosecutors loved because they were bulletproof. I had a 94% conviction rate. That's what 30 years of experience teaches you. Patience, attention to detail, and the ability to see patterns where other people see chaos. Dorothy died 3 years ago. Cancer. It took her fast, and when I lost her, I lost the only person who really understood who I used to be. She'd seen me come home frustrated when cases went cold, celebrated with me when we finally nailed some scumbag who'd been stealing from elderly folks' pension funds. "You're their guardian angel," she used to say. "Those people don't even know you exist, but you're protecting them." After the funeral, I thought I'd be okay. I had my pension, 65% of my final salary, plus Social Security. The house was paid off. I had savings. But the loneliness was crushing. When you've been married for 38 years, the silence in a house becomes deafening. Gerald grieved for maybe a month before his wife Patricia started talking about moving in with me. "You're all alone now, Dad," he said. "We can take care of you. And honestly, our apartment is too small now that Patricia's pregnant with our second child. I should have seen it then. Should have applied the same skepticism I'd used on insurance claimants who showed up with sudden back injuries right after losing their jobs. But I was lonely. I missed Dorothy. I wanted family around. That was my first mistake. They moved in within 2 months. At first it was fine. I gave them the master bedroom, the one Dorothy and I had shared for decades, and took the smaller room upstairs. Patricia was sweet at first, always asking if I needed anything, complimenting my cooking. Gerald seemed happy to have his childhood home back. Then the baby came, little Stanley, and everything changed. "Dad, can you keep it down? The baby's sleeping. Dad, we need to use your car today. Ours is acting up again. Dad, Patricia's mother is coming to stay for a few weeks. Would you mind sleeping in the basement?" Each request got bigger, each demand more entitled. The basement became my regular bedroom. The living room became their space. I wasn't allowed to have my old work buddy Lenny over anymore, because it makes Patricia uncomfortable having strangers in the house. And I went along with it because they were family, because I didn't want to cause problems, because I thought this was what being a grandfather meant, making sacrifices. Looking back, I can see I was exhibiting classic victim behavior, the same patterns I'd documented in dozens of elder abuse cases over the years. 6 months ago, I noticed something that triggered every investigative instinct I had. Mail coming to the house addressed to companies I'd never heard of. Gerald being secretive with his laptop, quickly closing it when I walked into a room. Patricia suddenly wearing expensive jewelry, a tennis bracelet that had to cost at least $3,000, earrings that looked like real diamonds. I'm old, but I'm not senile. After 30 years investigating financial fraud, certain patterns become second nature. When someone's lifestyle suddenly exceeds their known income, when mysterious business mail starts arriving, when people become secretive about their finances, These are red flags, big ones. I started doing what I'd always done, paying attention, taking mental notes, building a case file in my head. Gerald worked part-time at a real estate office, pulling in maybe $2,800 a month on a good month. Patricia had a part-time job at Target, maybe $1,200 monthly. Their total household income was under $50,000 a year, but I was seeing evidence of spending that suggested access to much more money. That's when I found the documents in Gerald's desk drawer. See, Patricia had gone out shopping with the baby. Gerald was at work and I was watching little Stanley, or supposed to be. The desk was right there in what used to be my study, back when it was actually my house, and the drawer was slightly open. In my line of work, you learn that people who are hiding something are usually pretty sloppy about it. They think they're being careful, but they make mistakes. Gerald had made a big one. Inside that drawer, I found a manila folder filled with documents that made my blood run cold. The first was a quitclaim deed. My house signed over to something called Summit Holdings, LLC. My signature was on the bottom, except I never signed it. I'd examined thousands of forged signatures in my career. You develop an eye for it. The pressure points were wrong. The flow of the pen strokes didn't match my natural hand movement. Whoever had forged this was decent but not professional. It was Gerald's work. I recognized his attempt to mimic my capital letters. But that wasn't the worst of it. I kept digging through the folder and found a reverse mortgage application, also with my forged signature. They'd borrowed against my house, $285,000. The lender was listed as First National Lending Corp. Now, most people would see that name and think it sounded legitimate. Banks have names like that, right? But when you've spent 30 years tracking financial fraud, you learn to spot the patterns. Real banks don't lend that kind of money with minimal documentation. Real banks don't process reverse mortgages in 10 days. And real banks don't have addresses that trace back to post office boxes. I pulled out my phone and did what I'd done thousands of times before. I started documenting evidence. Photo of each document, making sure to capture the forged signatures clearly. Photo of the loan terms. Photo of the company letterhead. I'd learned long ago that evidence you don't document is evidence you don't have. Then I did something that would have made Dorothy proud. I didn't confront them. I didn't get emotional. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, went downstairs, and started building a case. First step was running First National Lending Corp. through the database resources I still had access to. One call to my old partner, Lenny Foster. He'd gone private after retirement, but still had contacts everywhere. Within 2 hours, I knew First National was a front operation, the kind of company that makes loans to people who can't qualify anywhere else, at interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. Gerald had borrowed $285,000 at 24%. Annual interest. The monthly payments were $6,800. On his income, he could maybe manage $800 a month. This wasn't just fraud, it was financial suicide. But here's what really got to me. I found a second folder. This one contained research on assisted living facilities, not just brochures, detailed financial analysis, waiting lists, admission requirements. There were handwritten notes in Patricia's writing. Memory care wing, $8,500 per month. Could claim dementia onset. Would need doctor's evaluation. Dr. Martinez seems cooperative. They weren't just stealing my house. They were planning to have me declared incompetent and locked away. That night at dinner, I watched them with completely different eyes. Dorothy used to say I had a poker face that could fool the devil himself. It served me well now. Dad, Gerald said, pushing his food around his plate. Patricia and I have been talking. We think it might be time for you to consider assisted living. I took a bite of my meatloaf, chewed, slowly. Is that so? It's just that you're getting older, Patricia chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. We worry about you. What if you fall? What if something happens when we're not home? The irony wasn't lost on me. They were expressing concern about me falling, while planning to push me into institutional care. I appreciate your concern. There's a really nice facility in Akron, Gerald continued. We looked into it. They have activities, medical care, everything you'd need. How much does it cost? They exchanged a glance. I recognized that look from hundreds of interrogations, people trying to coordinate their lives in real time. Well, that's the thing, Dad. With the equity in the house, we could easily afford it. Equity in my house? Our house, technically, Patricia said, her mask slipping just a fraction. Gerald grew up here. It's his childhood home. I set down my fork and looked at my son. In that moment, I saw what Dorothy had been afraid of when Gerald was a teenager. She'd worried about his entitled attitude, his belief that the world owed him something. "You're too easy on him," she'd said. "He needs to learn that respect is earned, not given." I should have listened to her then. "I see," I said quietly. That conversation was 3 months ago. After that night, everything changed. They stopped pretending to respect me. I became an inconvenience in my own home, an obstacle to their plans. Gerald started staying out late, coming home drunk. Patricia became openly hostile. 2 weeks ago, Gerald shoved me into a wall because I accidentally woke Stanley, left a bruise on my shoulder the size of a grapefruit. Last week, Patricia accidentally served me food she knew I was allergic to, shellfish in a casserole. I spent the night in the emergency room, but I was building my case. Every incident documented, every conversation recorded when possible, every piece of financial evidence photographed and cataloged. They thought they were dealing with some helpless old man. They were wrong. That brings us to last Sunday night, the night everything came to a head. Dinner was more tense than usual. I'd made pot roast, Dorothy's recipe. It was Sunday, which meant it had been exactly 3 years since she'd passed. I'd gone to her grave that morning, like always. Told her I was sorry. Sorry I'd let our son become this. Sorry I hadn't seen the signs earlier. "This is overcooked," Patricia said, dropping her fork with a dramatic clatter. "Honestly, Harold, can't you do anything right?" She'd stopped calling me Dad 2 months ago. Another little power play in their campaign to strip away my dignity. "I followed Dorothy's recipe," I said quietly. "Well, Dorothy's dead," she snapped. "Maybe it's time to accept that and move on." Something shifted in Gerald's face. Even he looked uncomfortable with that one. But he didn't defend his mother's memory, didn't defend me, just sat there like the coward he'd become. "That was uncalled for," I said, keeping my voice level. In my interrogation days, I'd learned that the person who stays calm controls the conversation. "You want to talk about uncalled for?" Patricia stood up, her face flushed with fake outrage. "You want to talk about how you sit around this house all day contributing nothing, eating our food, using our utilities? Your house? Your food?" I kept my voice steady, professional. Interesting choice of words. What's that supposed to mean? Gerald's eyes narrowed. There was something desperate in his expression now. I could have kept quiet, should have, maybe. But I was tired of being disrespected in my own home, tired of watching my son become someone Dorothy would be ashamed of. And honestly, my case was ready. I had everything I needed. "It means I know about Summit Holdings," I said calmly. "I know about the forged quitclaim deed. I know about the reverse mortgage application. And I know exactly what kind of operation the First National Lending Corp really is." The color drained from Gerald's face, so fast I thought he might pass out. Patricia recovered faster. Predators usually do. "You went through our things?" "My things, in my house, that you're trying to steal using forged documents." Gerald stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You don't understand, Dad. We were going to tell you. We just needed to forge my signature, needed to borrow $285,000 using my house as collateral without my knowledge, at 24% interest on a loan you can't possibly repay." That last detail hit home. I watched Gerald's face crumble as he realized I knew about the interest rate, knew about the payment schedule, knew exactly how screwed they really were. Patricia's face twisted with pure hatred. "You self-righteous old fool. You sit there judging us? You have no idea what it costs to raise a child, what it costs to live. So you decided to steal from me, to have me declared incompetent and locked away in that memory care facility you've been researching." Gerald's mouth fell open. He hadn't known. I'd found those documents too. "It's not your house anymore," Gerald shouted, his composure completely gone now. "The deed is filed. It's done. And you can't prove the signature was forged. Who's going to believe some senile old man?" That's when he made his biggest mistake. That's when he pushed me. I was standing at the top of the basement stairs, my usual route to what had become my bedroom. He put both hands on my chest and shoved hard. For a 35-year-old man pushing a 67-year-old, he should have been more careful about how much force he used. I fell backward, tumbled down 13 steps, landed in a heap at the bottom. The pain was immediate and blinding. My hip, my wrist, my ribs. Everything hurt. I felt something warm running down my forehead. Blood. Above me, I heard Patricia laugh. Actually laugh. Maybe now he'll finally get the message. Is he dead? Gerald's voice, uncertain now that the reality of what he'd done was sinking in. Who cares? Help me pack the baby's things. We're going. To stay at my mother's tonight. Let the old bastard lie there and think about what he's done. Their footsteps faded. I heard them moving around upstairs, heard Gerald's voice. What if he's really hurt? What if... Then our problems are solved, Patricia cut him off. Old people die from falls all the time. We came home and found him. Tragic accident. Case closed. The front door slammed, car doors, engine starting. They were gone. I lay there in the dark for a long moment, taking inventory. Hip possibly fractured, wrist definitely broken, ribs bruised, maybe cracked. I was bleeding from somewhere on my head, but I was conscious. And despite the pain, despite the betrayal, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. For 30 years, I'd built cases against people who thought they could outsmart the system. People who thought being family, being charming, being young, meant they could get away with stealing from others. I'd seen this pattern hundreds of times. The escalation, the desperation, the violence when they were cornered. And I knew exactly what to do about it. I pulled out my phone with my good hand and dialed a number I hadn't called in 6 months. Lenny answered on the second ring. Harold? Jesus, what time is it? It's time, Lenny, I said quietly. I need help. A pause. Leonard Foster had been my partner for 15 years at the State Department. Now he ran his own private investigation firm, specializing in financial crimes. He knew my voice, knew that tone. What's the situation? I told him everything. The forged documents, the fraudulent loan, Gerald and Patricia's plan to have me declared incompetent, the assisted living research, tonight's assault. When I finished, Lenny was quiet for a long moment. Your boy borrowed from a front company and assaulted you? Harold, this isn't just fraud anymore. This is elder abuse, assault, conspiracy, federal crimes. I know exactly what it is. I'll make some calls. Norman Hughes still practicing elder law. As far as I know, good. We'll need him. And Harold, don't let them know you're planning anything. Can you do that? I almost laughed despite the pain. Lenny, I've been investigating criminals longer than they've been alive. I hung up and closed my eyes. The pain was bad, but I've had worse. In my old job, getting threatened by suspects was part of the territory. One case, a disability scammer tried to run me down with his car in a parking lot, while claiming he couldn't walk without crutches. That's what Gerald never understood. His gentle father, the man who coached his little league team and attended every parent-teacher conference, that man was real, but he was only part of the picture. I must have passed out from the pain because the next thing I knew, light was streaming through the basement window. Morning, I tried to move and immediately regretted it. My phone showed 8 missed calls from Gerald. Probably realized he might have actually killed me and was worried about the legal complications. I heard the front door open upstairs. Footsteps. The basement door creaked open. Dad? Dad, are you down there? Gerald's voice shaking now. I didn't answer. Let him sweat. Oh, God. Patricia, something's wrong. Keep your voice down. The neighbors might hear. Patricia's voice, calculating even now. He fell. It was an accident. That's our story. But the bruises from last week, if they examine him, then we stick to the story. He's been getting more unsteady on his feet. We've been worried about falls. That's why we've been researching assisted living facilities. I almost had to admire her. Even facing potential murder charges, she was thinking strategically. So, what do we do now? We wait, Patricia said coldly. If he's not dead yet, maybe he will be soon. Old people die from falls all the time. We just say we came home this morning and found him. That's murder, Patricia. That's survival. You want First Nationals people to find out we can't make the payments? You want them to come looking for their money? This is the only way out. More silence. Then Gerald's footsteps retreating. The basement door closed. My own son was going to let me die down here. But I'd expected that. In 30 years of investigating financial crimes, I'd learned that desperation makes people capable of almost anything. I checked my phone. 3 text messages from Lenny. Team assembled. ETA 2 hours. Stay strong. At exactly 11:30 a.m., I heard vehicles outside. Heavy footsteps. The front door opened without knocking. They had a warrant. What the hell? Gerald's voice terrified. You can't just break into our house. Actually, we can, Norman Hughes's voice, calm and professional. We have an emergency court order for wellness check and evidence preservation. Where is Harold Pierce? He fell. He's in the basement. We were just about to call 911. Were you now? Interesting, because according to your cell phone records, you've made no calls to emergency services. But you did make several. Calls to a bail bondsman at 6 a.m. this morning. That was Lenny's work. He'd pulled Gerald's phone records while I was unconscious. Footsteps thundered down the basement stairs. The light flicked on. 4 people stood over me. Lenny, Norman, Detective Martinez from the Elder Abuse Unit, and a paramedic. Harold, Lenny said, kneeling down. You look like hell. Feel worse. Did you get everything we need? And then some. Detective Martinez executed a search warrant 30 minutes ago. Found the forged documents, the loan paperwork, even Patricia's notes about having you declared incompetent. Plus, we've got the recorded conversation from last night. I looked puzzled. Recorded? Lenny smiled grimly. Voice-activated recorder. I planted it in your living room 2 weeks ago when you first told me you suspected something. Every conversation since then is documented. The paramedics lifted me carefully, professionally, carried me up the stairs. In the living room, Gerald and Patricia were sitting on the couch, facing Detective Martinez and 2 uniformed officers. Gerald looked terrified. Patricia looked furious. Detective Martinez looked at me, broken and bloody, and shook his head. Mr. Pierce, I need you to tell me exactly what happened last night. So I did. Everything. The confrontation, Gerald pushing me down the stairs, their conversation about letting me die. When I finished, Martinez turned to Gerald and Patricia. Gerald Pierce, you're under arrest for assault in the 2nd degree, elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy. Patricia Pierce, you're under arrest as an accessory to assault, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. Wait, Patricia shrieked. You can't do this? We have a baby. Your baby will go to Child Protective Services pending investigation, Martinez said calmly. We've already contacted Patricia's mother. She's agreed to take temporary custody. Dad, please. Gerald's voice cracked as they cuffed him. I'm your son. I made a mistake. I was desperate. I looked at him for a long moment. At 67 years old, I'd learned that some mistakes aren't mistakes. They're choices, and choices have consequences. You stopped being my son when you forged my signature, I said quietly. You stopped being my son when you planned to have me locked away. You stopped being my son when you pushed me down those stairs and decided to let me die. They were led away in handcuffs. Gerald was crying. Patricia was screaming threats about lawsuits and police brutality. At the hospital, they x-rayed everything. Fractured hip, broken wrist, 3 cracked ribs, minor concussion. The doctor asked what happened. I fell down the stairs, I said. But I had good friends who made sure I got help. They kept me for 5 days. When I got home, Norman had taken care of everything. The house was back in my name. The fraudulent mortgage was voided. Gerald and Patricia's belongings were in storage. 6 months later, Gerald got 2 years in federal prison. Patricia got 18 months. They both had to pay full restitution. Every penny they'd borrowed, plus interest and penalties. Their wages would be garnished for the next 15 years. I visit Dorothy's grave every Sunday. Justice served, I tell her headstone. Just like you taught me, the right way. I volunteer at the senior center now, teaching other elderly folks how to recognize financial scams. Trust but verify, I tell them. And remember, family doesn't mean unconditional forgiveness. I live alone, but I have peace. At 67, that's worth more than anything. Some people think family means unconditional forgiveness, that blood should excuse any betrayal. Those people have never been pushed down the stairs by their own child and left to die. I learned that sometimes the quietest old men are the ones you should fear most, because we're quiet for a reason. We're quiet because we've spent decades learning exactly how the system works, and we know how to make it work for us. Dad